the summer of 2022, NIST announced that they were planning to revise NIST SP 800-171 because the last revision came out several years ago. So in August of 2022, Ron Ross said that over the next 18 months, they were planning on revising all of the NIST documents that pertain to the requirements underlying the CMMC assessment program. Towards the end of 2022, they let us know that they were planning to issue the initial draft of 800-171 in late spring of 2023. So when we take those two things together, we can expect a publication window of the new revision to the 800-171 requirements sometime between late spring and the end of 2023, essentially. And when you think about whether we'll have an interim final or a proposed rule scenario, this becomes very important, because if we end up with an interim final rule scenario, all of the early adopters who are ready to go for their assessment will likely be able to get an assessment against the current version of NIST SP 800-171 and therefore avoid any increases or changes or complexities in the new revision, which is what most people are predicting. However, a lot of companies are happy that they might get a proposed rule and a quote-unquote delay, a year extension unofficially, while DoD goes through public comments. But be careful what you wish for, because if we end up with a proposed rule, then it would essentially guarantee that everybody who has to go through CMMC once it is effective would be assessed against the new standard, which is likely to be larger, which would take more time to assess, it would take more time to implement, it would be more costly overall. And speaking of time to implement, probably the most important lens to view these timelines through is the average amount of time that it takes contractors to implement their requirements. Now, from a Summit 7 perspective, based off of our experience helping nearly 1,000 companies that contract with the DoD, the vast majority of whom would be considered small and medium businesses, roughly in the 50 to 100 employee size, it takes companies on average about 12 to 18 months to go from the status quo to what you could consider to be assessment ready with the requirements in NIST SP 800-171. So for enterprising organizations that want to be ready, when the rule is theoretically going to be published in May of 2023, then for a company to be ready for that day, they would have needed to start their implementation about the time CMMC 2.0 was announced in November of 2021. Now, if companies wanted to be ready at the interim final rule scenario, when CMMC would be rolling out into contracts at the end of the 60-day public comment period, then companies would have needed to start their implementation in earnest, basically the beginning of 2022, or about a year before the time of this recording. For companies that are saying, well, a proposed rule is a delay, and that is a delay of quite a long time, and a year is a long time, not necessarily, because when you overlay the average amount of time, if a company wanted to be ready when the final rule came out under the proposed rule scenario, which would roughly be summer of 2024, then those companies would need to start their implementation in earnest basically right now at the time of this recording in the first quarter of 2023 in order to hope to be ready for assessments when that rule goes into effect.